Mr. Chair. I have a question I'm going to bring to you, Mr. Bustamante, in a minute, but I want to just follow up on what Senator Haggerty was asking about. He seems to be suggesting that government spending is what is contributing to rising prices that consumers are experiencing at the grocery store when they buy auto insurance. So do you think the child tax credit was contributing to inflation?
Thank you for the question, Senator. When we actually look at whether it's at 2022, whether it's looking at 2023, or even during the past 6 months, about 2/3 of inflation is actually due to supply factors as well as other factors unrelated to demand.
Right. So our investment in the child tax credit, in housing assistance, and student loan forgiveness is not what's causing prices to go up for consumers. And I actually think what I hear from my constituents in Minnesota is they're trying to figure out, like, why is it that I'm paying so much more at the same time that corporate profits are going up so much? I just had this question today, Mr. Chair, when I had my coffee with Tina, with Minnesota constituents, and one of my constituents was trying to understand why his insurance, his home insurance rates were going up so much. Now, let me ask you about this. I want to actually hone in on auto insurance, which has been emerging as a huge driver in rising prices. In Minnesota, car insurance rates have gone up 35%, more than 35% between 2022 and 2023. Now, some of that, of course, can be attributed to rising costs of car parts and other market forces, but there's also been a real reduction in coverage options and fewer choices for consumers, and consumers are getting squeezed here. So can you talk about this a little bit? What are you seeing when it comes to rising car insurance rates, and to what do you attribute these increased costs? And let's be honest, another sector where there's a fair amount of concentration, as Senator Warren was discussing.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, you're actually pointing at two main factors that are driving inflation in higher prices in the insurance industry, which is a key driver to inflation today. One is consolidation. There are just fewer insurance providers out there, and that has enabled them to collude and ultimately pass price hikes much greater than the actual cost to replace parts or replace cars. And then the second factor, which has been this black box of pricing strategies that insurance companies ultimately employ, which enable them to both engage in economic discrimination, where they're able to offer very similar customers vastly different prices just based on their personal characteristics, oftentimes in ways that are not transparent, in ways that are ultimately driving prices much higher than they ought to be.
Competition and the free market works when there's good balance, when there's a shared power, so that consumers have power, businesses have power, and then allows consumers choice, and therefore they're able to make the best choice and not be sort of constrained by only having one or two places where they can purchase something. And speaking of black boxes, Mr. Beydoun, I want to come to you next. We're seeing this huge affordability crisis in housing and in rents. I see this in my home state of Minnesota. And one of the things that I'm particularly concerned about is how algorithmic pricing is being used to allow ways for landlords to be able to use their market power to raise rents in ways that are just patently unfair. Could you talk about this? I'm particularly concerned about RealPage, a company that has reportedly used confidential data and algorithms to help landlords indirectly collude to set prices and even withhold supply in the market.
That's right, Senator. And if a group of landlords controls most of the units in a neighborhood, and they all use the same algorithm to suggest prices, that algorithm can effectively drive up prices and facilitate collusion in the same way that a human could. And so if these landlords were getting together at a barbecue and deciding to raise prices, they could come to the same sort of level of price hikes. The algorithm could come to the same level of price hikes that humans can.
That's right. And I mean, that kind of collusion to raise prices across an industry sector we don't allow that, right?
No, it's illegal. And
right.
And that's why I'm certainly applaud the Federal Trade Commission for applying antitrust law to these more modern scenarios and very effectively making the point that algorithms can facilitate collusion.
Yeah, I agree with that. RealPage is now the subject of multiple investigations and lawsuits, and I wonder how long it will take before the next iteration of this strategy comes about and where we go from here. Do you have any advice for us? I appreciate you calling out the FTC, which I think have been doing an excellent job, but other advice for us as we look at ways to put some guardrails around how this technology can lead to collusion?
Absolutely. I would also call out junk fees in rental. I think that's something that's a new frontier, and increasingly the cost of rent, the upfront cost that renters are seeing, is not the final cost they pay. And I think this body and other regulatory agencies really need to protect the basic guarantee that the price we see is the price we'll pay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.